But like after
Right.
you've been through it once, you've been through it twice, and you realize there's a way out, like that's where that ability to stay stable and content and like motivated during the downtimes comes from.
I truly didn't know when I was in a really depressed state that I could literally choose. And
Yeah,
it's funny.
You rarely do. It doesn't feel like a choice. It never feels like a choice because you don't
Yeah.
choose to be in that state. So how could you choose to get out of it? I'm not choosing
Right.
to be depressed. I don't want to choose to feel like shit. So how am I going to choose to get out of it? But like, yeah, you can. It's a choice. It's perspective. You know, it's the mind game, kind of how this whole quarantine thing's going. Like, there's so many different ways to handle this. And like, I would love to see, like, I think it'd be so interesting to have a glimpse, like a bird's eye view of like 5 different people and how each one of them has been coping with it. Like, how interesting would that be? Some people are still just like working from home. For some people, work never stopped. It's
Yeah,
like
I have friends that like life is totally normal.
yeah, and I'm over here like, what's happening?
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, so yeah, it's a choice. Most things in life are, and it's nice to have those friends in those moments that can sit there like this and remind you, like, yeah, man, you got a choice right now, and I'm here for you no matter what choice you make. But please, I want you to make one that's gonna make you happy.
Having those types of relationships, I'm insanely grateful, because even like an hour ago when we were talking before getting on this call, we have like a show on the market, and I said if it gets picked up, and you said when it gets picked up.
Oh yeah.
And even having little reminders like that, like literally in my head I was analyzing that thought pattern, and as soon as I decided to stick with when instead of if, the future became very, very clear. And I think the challenge is not getting attached to like your version of what the when looks like, but understanding that choosing when instead of if gives you so much more empowerment in the way that you move, because you know you don't need to have control over the details. But by believing that it's when instead of if, you can move forward with tremendous confidence in whatever your decision is going to be.
That's why they say wisdom comes with age, because it's like you go through enough experiences and you go through enough down and outs that you realize there is a way out. And you know, like when you're younger, it feels like there is no way out, like there's no hope. But like after you've been through it once, you've been through it twice, and you realize there's a way out, like that's where that ability to stay stable and content and like motivated during the downtimes comes from. And it's still hard as hell. I mean, it's hard no matter how you look at it. But that's something that I really want in my life, is to be able to navigate my negative moments just as well as I do my positive ones. We've talked about that before. Like, that's something that I struggle with, because I can get in my head and I can let my emotions take over completely. And when they do take over, then I'm like, oh, I have no choice anymore. This is just what it is. But that's not the case. And, you know, it takes a lot of work, and you got to keep your mind healthy, and you have to keep your mind like active to understand that. And I really mean that, like, because before we did the book group, and before I went to therapy, and before I started doing all of that work, I genuinely feel like I was a different person. Like, the type of understanding that I've gained it's crazy. My understanding has allowed me to have more empathy for other people.
I also think it's interesting that the evidence of that shows up when you look at the amount of time that you can recount on being happy or being fulfilled or being in flow, whether that's having a project that is like shooting and you're working and you're happy there, or it's like smoking a joint on Saturday, you know, and like stepping into that space that's just like presence. I feel like I can sort of measure my life. I look at before I really started getting a handle on some of like my own development and taking responsibility for my own development. The cavalry's not coming. Save yourself. Like, you owe yourself. You can give yourself that gift. The entire color of my memory from the time before that to the time after is vividly different.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's getting exponentially brighter. It's getting exponentially more electric as I go.
I can totally relate to that. I've had many moments along the way where I've questioned what the hell, you know what I mean? Like, why am I doing this? why am I doing any of this? Like, why am I with this person? Why am I pursuing this career? Why, like, what the hell's going on here? Like, I've had so many moments like that, and it's just, I don't know. I think it's that thing of the emotional intelligence and like understanding that to appreciate the good, you got to have the bad. You got to have those moments to really understand what it feels like to have worked for something and finally got it. Like, you have to have the no's. Oh, it's kind of like the concept we were talking about. Like, how boring would life be if we were like, I want this, 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 and this. So you check everything off on a list and then you just have it.
Yeah, it shows the prime shipping.
You wouldn't understand how to appreciate it. You wouldn't know what to do with it. You would feel unfulfilled. You would always be wanting more. It's why so many billionaires, it's the same concept. Billionaires are seeking Buddhist monks. It's not the other way around. That's
why there are these mastermind groups that cost, you know, Tony Robbins' group costs what, like $1 million a year to be in his like inner circle. It's just time with a guy, but it's the value that you place on that. You respect it because of the investment. And I think when we look at the years, the tears, the blood, the sweat, everything, all the equity that we put into the things we do, it means so much more when you worked your ass off for it. And not to say that it's always about like dragging yourself out. I don't mean that.
Yeah,
but when you can clearly see, like, you set an intention and you follow through and like you give yourself that's the really powerful thing.
Absolutely.
You take responsibility for what you can take responsibility for.
Which is ultimately just ourselves.
Right. Isn't that interesting?